Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Resource YYC Lunch and Learn. Today we have an amazing speaker for you, Shawna, and she's going to be talking about setting the right mindset for selling success. And before we get to that, I just want to remind you that Resource YYC is a co-working space for professionals. So we've got a little bit of a different space for you here, and with more offices and areas for you and boardrooms. So you can come drop by, try it out, do a drop-in day, or you can come in for a month and see how it works. All right, I'll pass it over to you, Shawna.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for joining me on this. This is kind of an interesting topic, one that's near and dear to my heart. I love this conversation. It seems to come up in every single sort of sales training that I do. It's really all about mindset. So despite having, some of the best possible skills and knowledge and expertise, we have to get over our mindset as well, to be really successful. So that's why I've created this little lunch and learn. I hope that there'll be lots of opportunities to sort of participate and add questions, and there'll also be question and answer at the back end as well. So let's get into it. So the fact of the matter is, we all are conditioned through our brain to have negativity bias. That's just the fact of the way our brain works. And so much of that is reinforced in our life experiences, what we've learned, what we've anticipated. And so much of what we think transposes into what our expectations are and the actual result that we create. So when you think about it, so many people tell me that when they're talking about a sales call, it's like, I don't want to go there. I know I'm going to get a no. And you can see on the right-hand screen, there's this person, he or she is wrapped up in this no. And literally, you really bind it. You don't have creativity, you don't have flexibility in that space because you're really confined within that. And what I call the negative spiral, you'll see on the left-hand side. And it all starts with that expectation. I expect to hear no. And again, that's driven by your brain. And then that goes down into, we internalize that reaction. And for many different reasons, why are they going to have that? That erodes our confidence. And what that does is it makes us much less able to take risks, to take chances. So again, we're really confined by that. And that drives our behaviors. We procrastinate, we avoid. All of these things obviously are not very conducive to a selling relationship. And so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today, because so much of this is about mindset. And what mindset really is, in a nutshell, it's what we think. It's what we believe is happening. And those beliefs drive our actions. And so when you think about that, so many of us have some preset notions about what sales is. And you'll see on the screen, there's a self and there's a customer. So what I'd ask you to do is either in the chat or come off, put on the audio. But I would love you to tell me, what are some of the things that you think of from a self perspective about sales, some of the negative thoughts you have about self? Like one that comes up quite often is, I can't do sales. So I'd love you to add in, what are some other negative biases that you have or have seen in others around mindsets around selling? So again, feel free to come off audio or put it in the chat. And Rosemary, I'll just ask you to monitor the chat. I don't have that up and clearly seeing.
Shawna, I think one of the ones that I've seen, and I'm doing this transition to trying to sell my product, is the requirement for integrity to be or perceived lack of integrity that goes with sales. It's, you got to convince people, and and it's okay even if it's to trick them a bit. And so my previous careers have all been, integrity is just inviolable, and and so the convincing you have to do sales, and that's sort of a circular thing that I end up going through.
Thank you, Conrad. Absolutely. There are so many people who think that You know, it's a legacy of mistrust, right? You know, you think back, you know, a century ago and the people who were out there trying to manipulate, or you think of the proverbial car salesperson, right? These are legacies that are out there.
A great one to go with that is the comment in the chat of salespeople are sleazy.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So what else from a self? If you're thinking about things that you might think about, and so I'll just to prompt that a little bit, I'll show you some of the ones that I've thought about. Certainly, I've probably had moments of thinking this about my own sales journey, but there's certainly in the sales training and sales coaching that I do, these are ones that come up quite consistently. So is there anything you would add to that?
We've got a great one in the chat. I am invading their time.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Anything else? From a self perspective. What you've identified are some great ones that we're going to talk about in a moment about customer, but it also is driven by how we think and act. So if we just look at self for a moment, I can't tell you how many people say, I can't do sales. Or, you know, a lot of people who do more of a consultant type of sales, you know, they don't want to be considered salespeople because they have something really tangible to value. I'm a consultant, and you know, these are the types of things. You know, my personality doesn't suit sales. I hear this so often. You know, everyone has this proverbial idea that this really expressive, dynamic, outgoing individual is the person that, you know, the typical successful salesperson. But if you're not like that, they tend to think of, well, you know, I'm just not going to be good at sales. My personality doesn't fit that. Another one is it's us against them. That there's only one winner. And the challenge with that is that's setting up conflict versus collaboration. Really strong, successful sales calls and sales situations is built around that collaboration, really looking to support one another. So if you have this idea that, you know, coming into it, it's only one of us is going to be the winner, that's going to show up in how you're showing up as well. So many times I get this, it doesn't matter. They don't care what the solution is. They don't care if it's the best product. It's just all about the price. It has to be the lowest price. But the reality is, through good selling, you know, the right selling skills and ability to come to that conversation in a very productive way, very quickly, it's not about price. It's really about demonstrating that value and a strong return on your investment. I have heard so many people say, you know what, I'm just really not comfortable. I think that I have something of, you know, that's valuable to them, but I feel really bad about asking for their money. Maybe it's an assumption that they're selling to a consumer. And it's like, well, you know, this is kind of an expensive option. And I know, you know, I'm really, you know, tight with my own money. So I have a hard time selling this because I think perhaps it's not demonstrating the right level of value to them. Another one is, I need the sale. So many people have quotas, and towards the month end, they're like, oh, I'm not meeting my quota. So there's a desperation of making that sale. And then sometimes they're just not going to buy from me. Maybe I'm just a solopreneur and this is a very big company, so they're not going to value my services. Or maybe they're, you know, too small a company that you think that they can't afford your services. Could be any number of those. So these are ones that come up, and I'm thinking of my age. Yes. So Tammy, yes, we're going to talk about selling ourselves, which is important, but we'll talk a little bit more about that. But thank you for inviting that forward. All right. So if we look at the customer perspective, so I'd like to set this as the precedence of, this is our mindset going into a sales call. So these are what we're thinking. So the things that we're thinking about ourselves and the things that we're thinking about the customer. So we're assigning, before we even see them, we're assigning some different traits, characteristics, mindsets, beliefs about these people. You know, one of them is, I don't know them. So this concept of this integrity and this, I have to, they're not going to buy from me because I haven't developed known, like, and trust with them, right? Then they will take advantage of me. Many people have, unfortunately, had the experience of feeling like they've been taken advantage of in the past. And those individuals, you can clearly see them when you come into it. But we also have come to a sales situation where we felt taken advantage of. And so when this happens, a lot of times we actually overcompensate. It's like we go overboard to try and prove them wrong about this assumption we've made about them. They're not going to buy from me because they don't want to be taken advantage of. So I'm going to overcompensate and really prove to you that I will not take advantage of you. So again, you can see how these mindsets are really driving some of our actions and behaviors in the way that we're showing up. You guys talked about, I'm invading their time. I'm wasting their time. The reality is, a really good conversation where you're solving their problems is really creating value for them. And ultimately, you're a really good return on their time invested. So how can we think about those things? They don't listen to me. Well, I'm sure that some of that has been driven by some of the conversations you've had where someone was selling to you and they just continued to show you this presentation. You would bring up some sort of idea or concern and they just would kind of talk over you. So a lot of these are actually arriving from our own personal experiences. They don't follow up. And as a sales professional, this just breaks my heart, because this is one of those really important things in the sales process that often makes or breaks your sale, is the quality of follow-up that you're doing. But so many people don't follow up. Sometimes you make a sales call, you present your offer, but then you don't follow up. The reality is sometimes it takes as many as 5 calls in order to close that sale. And we're going to come back to that. They don't understand my needs. Again, it's this concept of we're not listening. I have a prepackaged solution and this is what it is. And the other thing is we assign, sadly, a lot of characteristics and traits based on personality types. Oh, they're too aggressive. They're too arrogant. These types of things. So mindset really does play a big role in how we're showing up, and in particular, what's driving our behaviors and our, from our beliefs to our actions. Is there anything anybody would want to add to that before I go on to the next slide? Question, comment? All right. So here's the facts. And the facts are selling is a process and is very much a learnable skill. There are techniques, there's skills, there's ways to learn to be active listeners, to ask the right questions. There is an actual flow and process that you take through that ultimately makes you much more successful. The other thing about that is it builds confidence. So much of what we talked about in the previous slide was, beliefs and fears about how we're adding value or we're not valuing, how we're showing up from an integrity perspective. Sales is really, it's a profession. Like so many other, whether it's engineering, HR, any number of things, right? There is a learnable skill and there's a professionalism that comes with that. So we just need to stand confident in that. Every personality type is and can be successful in sales. Each personality has unique strengths, talents, and abilities that, when properly leveraged, can be really successful in your sales. So never think that if you're an introverted individual, you can't be successful, or if you're a very analytical person, that you can't be successful in sales. I can assure you some of the highest performing salespeople I've seen have fit in those particular buckets. And it's because they have learned what the process is. And they flow through and are very committed around step number 3, which is it's about problem solving and value creation for your people. It's not about the product I have or the service that I have and you taking it on and being happy with that. You are actually coming to the engagement with, okay, help me to understand what are the issues that you're facing, and let's find out how we can actually solve your problem, not how I can sell you my product. And here's the other thing that's really important. Customers not only want your products and services, but they need them. So those are 4 really important facts that I'd like to really install in you as we've moved through in this conversation. And the last thing I'd like to say is all of this is based on really creating the right knowledge, having the right understanding, the right facts, so that you can actually go through and correct the mindsets that are impeding your success and create new ones that are grounded in expectations, habits, and processes. All right. I'm sure you guys have heard the word know, or the statement know, like, and trust. And that's very important in both sales and marketing. And what you need to understand is there's a buyer's journey. And what that buyer's journey breaks down into 3 awareness stages. There's actually 2 on the other end. But what's important for our conversation today is these 3, and these are the in advance. So there's the first one, which is actually the awareness stage. This is when a prospect actually starts to realize that they're experiencing some symptoms or a problem, or there's an opportunity. So that's sort of that first insight. Oh, you know what? I might have an issue or a problem. And then it moves on into consideration stage. And that's where, you know what? I've identified this, problem or opportunity. Now I'm getting to the point of I want to start to think about this. And so now they're starting to consider it. They're starting to research what their opportunities are. They're trying to narrow it down and get really clear about what that is so that they can seek out the right product, problem, or solution. And then we move into the final one, which is the decision stage. So now they're at that point of, you know what, we're going to fix this. This is the time frame that we're going to be doing it. I'm assigning a budget to it. Maybe it's an RFP that comes out. So when you look at those things, there are very clear time frames that your client is actually going to be looking at. And so that really is important to understand, because at each of those levels will drive a different conversation that you're having with prospects. All right. And quite frankly, on some really large, perhaps it's project-based or technology-based or installation of some sort, this awareness stage could be as many as 5 years out. Considerations phase might be, especially if it's an RFP for a project, it could be 18 months out. So understanding this is really critical in helping you to understand what kind of conversation am I having at each of these levels, what it should be the expectation of what I'm walking away with. If you're just meeting someone who's at an awareness stage, walking away, in that meeting and thinking that you're going to close that sale that day is very unrealistic. They haven't even really determined that this is a course of action that they're going to take. And I'd just like to throw out a few statistics too, for those of you who are fact-based analytical types who like to have some information. Some other really important statistics are only 2% of sales actually happen in the first meeting. So regardless of what sales call you're going on, only 2% close on that first meeting. We talked about that follow-up. You have to stay vigilant. 83% of the prospects who requested info, so at that awareness, maybe even into consideration stage, they don't buy for 3 to 12 months. 3 to 12 months. And don't give up. 50% of all sales happen after the 5th contact. So that follow-up is so important. What do we need to do? What's the next stage in this process? What additional meetings do we need to have? And again, that expectation and grounded in the knowledge of how things work really sets the stage much better. All right, another thing that you need to know, so we just talked about the buyer's journey, but there's also buyer readiness. Some of that was implied in sort of that consideration and decision making, but there's also buyer readiness. And first and foremost, you need to know that 50% of the prospects that are out there are actually not a good fit for what you sell. So, you've heard about really defining your target market, really understanding who it is. The more that you can get really clear about that and your prospecting efforts go around making sure you're talking to the people that really fit for your product, dramatically improves that opportunity for you. If you just look at an industry and target an industry, your success is going to be a lot less because, again, there's a lot of people out there who are not going to have a good fit. So the better you can understand that, the better. That also means you need to get really good at not just targeting your target market, but when you have those appointments, you really need to get really clear about the criteria and the questions that you need to ask that will help to understand, are they a fit, first and foremost, for your products or services? But also, you need to understand their buyer readiness. Where are they on that buyer's journey? About 25% of the people are in that sort of, I'm ready to buy now. And so asking some key questions, and then as it comes out, you start to go, oh, okay, these people are really ready now. And that's going to guide the conversations to much more of an immediate need. What's their time frame? What's their budget? And very quickly going through much more of an action-oriented sales call with the expectation this is going to close in a short period of time. And the questions are all guided through that. Then you have the next segment, which is the future. So these people have a need. They are potentially looking at buying. Maybe they're sort of in that consideration stand, but quite often their purchase is 6 to 12 months out. So when you think about you're going through, you're pre-screening them with questions and you understand, okay, they're very future oriented. That's going to change some of the conversations to more of a high level. This is, these are the types of services that I offer rather than this specific one. They may not have a clear idea of what kind of budget. So you might be talking about, well, these are, different types of the things that we can do. It also may be, assessing what are the things that are going to be really critical to be successful in that. So maybe, are they going for an RFP? Is it maybe I need to get on a preferred vendors list? What are the different types of things that I need to do now so that we are ready to actually engage when you're ready to sell? So these are all really important things to understand because they really do guide both the questions that you're going to be asking, identify what the follow-up is going to be, but also clearly set expectations. I have seen so many people that they do sales forecasting and they just go, well, I'm going to close 100% of the people that I'm going to see. Or, maybe they're aware of their closing ratios, but what they haven't reflected in is time frame. So they may say, ABC customer, I'm going to close them, but I'm going to close them, I'm going to close them next month. But the reality is they're not ready to purchase for 12 months. So, clearly your forecast is going to be in jeopardy at that point in time. Oh, sorry. And the last one is satisfied. So these are the people who are satisfied with what they have and potentially the vendor who supports them. So a conversation with them really becomes even that much higher level, helping them, help them to see your insights and your awareness so that you can maybe become someone that they will want to rely on in the future. But it tends to be more about the insights and the industry and the awareness and sort of the intellectual property and knowledge that you can share with them versus it being a specific type of product. Because again, they're already satisfied with who they are. You want to be in a position that when that changes, or if that changes, that they are someone they're going to want to reach out to. All right. So, wow, you guys talked about in the beginning, you said, there's a legacy of mistrust. It's about integrity. They don't trust me. And sadly, there are some statistics out there that say only 3% of your buyers trust reps. As a professional salesperson, that just breaks my heart because I've always thought of myself as being a professional who's providing, something important to my people. But that's the reality. And trust is integral in terms of actually closing those sales and moving on to new opportunities. So I'd love for you guys either in a chat or on mic, give me some ideas about how do you create trust? Maybe this is with a, upcoming prospect, or maybe it's with existing clients. How do you create trust?
So I think the answer is always about your actions. You build trust through your behaviors, your actions.
Can you share more about that? Can you give me a specific example?
Well, so I'm actually sort of saying what the problem is, because you don't have, you've got limited connection in the first place, and you're so you don't have a lot of behaviors you're showing. They're on display for the prospect to pick up on that this is somebody I can trust. And so that to me that presents to me as a challenge. It's not what you say, it's what you do that matters, but you don't get it when you're starting off a new conversation. There's not a lot of doing. It's mostly talking. So that's a challenge that I see.
Yeah, it's sort of like, I can tell you that you can trust me, right? But the proof is sort of in that pudding, right?
And the bad actors are also out there saying you can trust me, and that's why there's just 3% of people that trust salespeople.
Absolutely.
They've seen it before.
Yeah, I've been burned probably multiple times, so I'm going to get more and more cautious. Absolutely.
So to me that problem presents as, how do I show actions that prove I'm trustworthy? And
love it. Excellent. Anybody else? Thank you for that, Conrad. And I'm seeing some great comments in here. Really listening, building rapport by asking, listing, and finding commonality. Gee, Randy, it's like you've advanced through my slides already. Anything else? Yeah, absolutely. So here's a few things. Number one is referrals. So here's some really important, well, actually, I want to ask you this question before I say that. How many of you, and please be honest, how many of you consistently ask for referrals or introductions with your clients?
Yeah, need to work on that.
Yeah. Anybody else? Thank you, Conrad, for being bold and honest. It's humbling to say I have been in sales my entire career, and I'm a sales coach and sales trainer, and yet there's times that I walk away and go, people offer me the referral before I actually even go, oh, would you like to step up, or could you give me that introduction to somebody else? It is something that needs to become a habit. And I think it goes back to some of that mindset that we talked about, right? I'm afraid that they're going to say no. You really sucked at delivering value, right? But here's a really compelling reason to start thinking about that. And this is 91% of your customers would give you a referral or give you an introduction to someone. 91. And that probably comes across as a little surprising in the beginning, but I'd love for you to sit back and go, you're really a high professional who really wants to deliver. You're committed to really bringing them a great customer experience. So why wouldn't they? Right? But here's the thing, and this goes to what Conrad said, and quite frankly, that I've admitted openly here. And if you bring it outside of this meeting, I'm going to deny it. But 11%, only 11% of salespeople actually ask. So 91, and yet only 11% of us are asking. So I'd encourage you to start making that more of a habit. Becoming a trusted advisor. So that's a little bit of what Conrad was talking about. It's sort of that proof, but it's also about really developing that knowledge and expertise that people see you as someone who can provide insights that are really relevant and valuable to their company. And there's a number of ways that you can do that. You know, in the world that we live in now, social media, you know, cultivate your credibility and the value that you can create by offering content, by engaging with people on social media. Those are some of the ways that you can do it. You can go to Resource YYC and offer a webinar for something that's valuable to the members. All of these things really help to identify you as a trusted advisor. And absolutely what Conrad talked about, walk the talk. Say what you're going to do what you're going to do, and in every opportunity, try and elevate it beyond a transactional sales and demonstrate the insights and the value that you can bring to them. Help them to be much more successful. Help them to resolve their situations and their challenges. And that really leads sort of into that committed, you know, the third point, and that's committed to building a relationship, not just beyond the sale. So it's not like, okay, I just tied this up in a nice bow. Here's your invoice. Thank you for payment. Bye. Right? You know, how can you continue to cultivate that relationship? You know, maybe what you sell, it might be sort of a one and done type of thing, but how can you create relationships beyond that? Again, the opportunity for referrals, the opportunity for introductions, but there may be other ways that you can cultivate that relationship. You know that there's a particular, you know, they're growing in a particular segment. You come across an article or a webinar or something like that. So you're continuing to feed that relationship. So again, when they have a need or they come across someone who has a need that you will fulfill, you're getting contacted for that. And as you guys talked about, like I said, I think some of you somehow mystically were able to go into my presentation and already look at the answers, or you're just so good at selling, but it's listening to their needs. So important. And what I would add to that is two things. One is, number one, you're really listening. You're asking questions, you're really digging deeper on that so that you really do understand. But then you're also going to summarize and prioritize what they're saying, because so often we want to make sure that what we actually heard is the truth. So we want to validate that. And we need to also have them prioritize it. Because so often they may have a big bucket, a big wish list bucket, but you know, the solution just isn't within their budget for 100% of that. So what is the most important? But yeah, it's about listening to their needs and listening with the intention of understanding, not in terms of selling. You know, having come from a sales background, I can tell you, I came from consumer packaged goods. We would launch a product, we'd have a deck this big. So I knew everything I could possibly know about that product. And they would role play and do Q&As and tests. And it'd be like, if this question comes up or this objection comes up, boom, this is what you hit them with. The challenge with that is, yes, you want to have that knowledge, but you do not want to be holding that knowledge in that present moment. You want to be listening, not with the, you know, the expectation of, oh, boom, now I know how to answer that, but really listening with the intention of understanding, and then and only then responding. All right, provide relevant information to their problem. So become a resource for them. Help them to understand what it is and any ways that you can provide information. Maybe case studies, it may be videos, it may be webinars, it could be any number of things. But also in terms of, you want to grow your expertise and ability to have conversations. So just like I'm today bringing you some information, but I'm also validating it with some statistics. Hopefully you're walking away going, oh, Shawna just didn't wing all of this. She did some research. She maybe has relevant information to share around this. So it's you know, coming back to Conrad's example, it's walking the talk. It's really showing how you're showing up. Communicate in a way that is meaningful to them. Not everybody is the same as us. Not everybody processes information the same way. Some people, you know, really want a lot of details, a lot of analytical facts, want time to understand and think about it. And others are just, give me a couple quick, really, quick ideas, tell me a story about it, and I'm good to sell, and I'm good to go. So, start to have some clues as to their behaviors, and then identify how you can work towards that and go for it. Another thing that's really important is use collaborative words. This has been proven over and over again about how to be really successful in sales, and change it from I'm being sold to now I'm collaborating with you. So words like we and us, think about those. And again, timely follow-up. The mindset of problem solving, adaptive, and versatility. This really kind of goes hand in hand with all of that. And again, I really want to encourage you to realize that you're not selling them a product or service. You're actually solving their problems, and that's what you're selling. And the really successful people who do that are really demonstrating curiosity. They're having real agile mindset because they're probing. They're asking questions. Tell me more about that. Help me to understand. What would be the impact if this gets resolved? These are all really important things, but it's also a mindset of, I'm not coming with a preformed, this is the solution. This is tailor-made, one size fits all. But I'm actually working through, talking with you, understanding what are the real unique challenges that you have. And then through those thought-provoking questions, co-create. I prefer co-creation of the solution than just, me handing it over. Because when you co-create, you get the best possible solution, and you actually are getting better buy-in because the people feel like they've been included in that, and it really becomes that right match. Mindset of positivity and optimism. Let's face it, sales is one of those things that it can be, positivity and optimism can be something that is a bit of a challenge. As we talked about, there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of no's coming out there. So how do we really stay positive? And so that mindset is really important. It's important not just from a sales perspective, but it actually has proven abilities for your mental wellness, your physical health. So how can we really stay positive and optimistic? And it absolutely drives sales results. You can see the little statistics there from Forbes that optimistic salespeople outperform pessimistic by 57%, even when the pessimists are much better at selling. So let's talk about how can we cultivate some positivity and optimism. And so here's a few of my helpful hints. The first one is expect the best possible outcome. Go in with, what is my intention for this call? And I would encourage you to think back to what we talked about in terms of the buyer journey and around readiness. So is it realistic, if this is my first time meeting someone, that I'm going to close the sale at the end of this call? So get clear about what is the likelihood and what is the right expectations. In some cases, you may have some preliminary knowledge that they're going to be doing something where an RFP is going to come out in the next 6 months. So that really guides, what kind of questions am I going to ask? And in that case, it's like, my best possible outcome is I want to be in a position that they're going to invite me to that RFP, that I've demonstrated intelligence. But again, it's about believing it is possible within those right expectations. Recognizing that selling involves rejection. And here's what I'd love you to think about. Make it a game. It really is a numbers game. So when you know that, that makes it, that changes the perception. It's not like I've gone in, I've got a no, and forever I'm never going back out there. You now know that there's closing ratios, there's buyer readiness, there's the buyer's journey. So what is realistic for me to do that? And recognize that the rejection is not of you as a person, it is a rejection of your product or service in this moment. Understand that your success is not just dumb luck. You have cultivated the skills, you become the expert, you have amazing skills, expertise, and knowledge that you can bring forward. Keep a record of successes, review it regularly, so that in those moments when you're feeling maybe not so optimistic, you look at that and you go, yeah, this is just a tide at the moment. It will change. I know this. Encourage others. That will really help inspire you from a, both a reciprocity perspective, but it feels good. And all of those things really contribute to that positive optimism. Practice gratitude, same thing. The more that we can do that, the more mindful we can be, the more present, the greater our opportunities are to stay optimistic and positive. Manage yourself. Show up, do the work. Plan to be coming at your best, not, I'm just going to show up, right? Be planful, dress appropriately, do the appropriate research, come prepared. And also manage yourself in terms of, I'm going into an appointment and you see a customer call coming in. Well, this person may be, for whatever reason, tends to be a really negative person. Plan for it, exercise, do the things that you need to do to keep you in a really positive, optimistic mindset, and engage in positive self-talk. Thinking about things like, I'm possible, instead of it's impossible. Leading into growth mindset. It's so important that you have the ability and realization that you have the ability to make an impact on your results, that what you knew yesterday isn't what you're stuck with for the rest of your life, that you have the ability to continue to grow. And that's so important because when you realize that, it opens up to opportunities to be creative, to take more risks, to recognize that this too shall pass, and take any challenges as a learning opportunity that will actually foster growth in the future. You can see there's so many different things in the little head there. So let's talk about some strategies. Again, I want to pull on, bring back Conrad for a second. And, he talked about authenticity, really showing up and being authentic. And that's such an important part of generating trust. It's about really creating that likability with people. And tied in with that is explore and appreciate your strengths. See, here's one of the things you probably heard about is unique value proposition and brands. Well, we individually have our own unique value propositions and our own brands, as does our products and our companies. And the more that we can really hone into what makes us uniquely special and play to those strengths, we're really providing great opportunities for people. So again, I'd love for you to think about those. Cultivate self-acceptance. Not everything, not everything is going to be a win, but don't take it on personally. Have self-compassion. Continue to look at your growth and your opportunities for moving forward. Strive for positive change. One of the things is, always having that view of the glass is half full, and how can we continue to grow? How can we continue to improve? How can we become more collaborative? View challenges, opportunities. Pay attention to your words and thoughts. This is such an important one that comes up, particularly, as a coach. I see that words can be very triggering. And, those thoughts can really trigger to mindsets. So really be paying attention to the words that you're using and the thoughts that you're having. And also with that, have awareness of how that's affecting your other people, and be adaptive. We talked about being adaptive to other people's styles and their behaviors, being, aware of their body language. And then I challenge you to learn something new every day. Those kind of new insights, whether it's directly to your job, to the industry, or even a particular hobby that you've got. The more that you can continue to do this, just expands that opportunity to have that real growth mindset that is so critical and so valuable in terms of being successful at selling. Tenacity. You probably have heard this with salespeople. You might have even read some different job postings. It's like, we want someone with a tenacity, who's really tenacious. Well, that's really important, because we need to make sure that we're getting out there. We can't accept this mindset of no one's ever going to buy from me, so I'm just going to avoid, right? We need to get up, we need to get out there, and we need to do that. And so some of the ways you can work on tenacity is through knowledge. So we talked about industry knowledge, product knowledge, becoming an expert, but also there's concrete knowledge. There's things like closing ratios, and it will depend entirely on the industry and the type of product you sell. But an overall, across all industries, HubSpot has stated that 19% is a close rate. So what does that mean? Why should I care? What's 19%? Anybody want to offer up what you think it is or what you know it to be? Silence. What it is literally, it's a closing rate of 1 in 5. So for every presentation you make to a customer, you close it 1 out of every 5. So knowing that, you can make a game out of it. You're into your 3rd call, you get a no, and instead of going, oh, I got another no, it's never going to work. I'm just, that's it. I'm going to go home for the day, or I'm going to go and work out or do something else. I'm done. But instead, if you go, woohoo, that was a no, that was my 3rd no. I just need 1 more no. And on the 5th one, I'm going to secure that sale. So it's kind of playing a little bit of a mind game. It's celebrating those no's. But it also has very practical application. When you understand your closing ratio, it helps you to set up what are the actions that you need to take. So if, for example, you needed to close 10 sales in a week, and if your closing ratio is 1 in 5, it means that you need to have 50 sales calls in order to secure that. Do you understand how I got that? So if if I need to have 10 sales and I close 1 out of every 5, so it means that, okay, I need to plan for having 50 calls. And so having that kind of clarity about what needs to happen in order to be successful is also really important. So I would say mindset is everything. Your success begins and ends with the mindset. It's grit that carries you through. Questions? Or does anyone have any questions or comments? I totally invite your comments as well. Including, was this helpful? Was there any new learning in this for you?
Hi.
Shawna,
Hi.
I think it's a really good refresher, and all those sort of positive thoughts or mindset are useful to go over and reinforce.
Thank you, Conrad. Was there anything that stood out for you? Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it just, what I get is it sort of confirmed. Those are all thoughts I've had, but I need to relive them, or make it more concrete. So
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that, Conrad. I appreciate it. Tammy.
Yeah, I actually just sat in on a webinar before this called Your Job Search is a Bare Knuckle Fight. And a lot of what you've said actually matches a lot of what they said. The one thing I got out of the last one that I think fits into sales and marketing yourself is the same as marketing a product, right? It's following up with, what would you hope for me to accomplish for you, your company, is a term or a follow-up question you can ask your client or potential client, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. One of the, what I would say is, to preface this, my career in sales was in consumer packaged goods. So I worked for companies like Pfizer and Campbell's Soup. And so my customers, I wasn't responsible for prospecting. I had a specific customer, so like Loblaws, for example. But when I would take them over, one of the things that I always wanted to understand from their perspective was about expectations. What are key success criteria for them? And so in that situation, I would often ask them, either tell me who the person is or the company is, but understanding that might be, confidential from your perspective. Tell me the characteristics or the activities that these people do that really solidify that they are who you consider to be their best salespeople. And then being rather competitive, it's like I'd be taking notes and going, okay, that tells me a lot about the expectations that you have. And, then I have that opportunity in that place to really show up in a way that is at least meeting or exceeding their expectations as well. So thank you, Tammy. That was a great insight. Anyone else? I love Nicola's. I think about the numbers. Nice. Nicola, were you familiar with some of the concepts that I talked about in terms of closing ratios, or specifically, maybe you had heard closing ratios, but how does that transcend into activity? What was there any insights in there for you?
No, I think it's just always to remember it's about the numbers. Sorry, I can't see my screen. I think it's about the I think it's a good thing to remember the numbers, and yeah, and so we need a lot more opportunities and sales calls, I think, if it's about the numbers. It's a good reminder. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And I would always, my 2 cents is always strive for each of those calls to be really quality calls. So quality in terms of come prepared, know the right questions that you need to have, but also do that upfront work. So, not just the pre-planning and the research, but make sure you're targeting the people who actually have the need for your products or services. So, try and do a good job of pre-qualifying them. I have seen, when we talk about the numbers, I have seen many people go, I saw 350 people this week, and how many of those translated into sales? Not one of them. Okay. Who were you seeing? And, when they actually come down, it's like, it's literally like they cold called, went to a strip mall and walked in and talked to everybody. Right. So, it's thinking about how your time is so valuable. How can you maximize that? And to the point of before, how do we make sure that we're not wasting their time? Again, it's really being thoughtful and prepared and, coming with some right strategies and not wasting someone's time that has no ability to execute on what you're offering. Thank you, Nicola. Anyone else? I saw Ron came on, but he's now off audio again.
No, I was just going to say it's a great presentation, Shawna. Actually, it's just a real reminder to be methodical and patient. I think a lot of people, you give up pretty quick, right? When in fact, you never know, a connection you make now could not mature for six months, but you just have to be methodical and be consistent in your approach.
Yes, thanks for sharing that, Ron. Yeah, it's so true. And, so many people of us that we stop after a second follow-up. If I was to say, what is one of the top 10 questions I get asked is, when is following up too much? Should I call after the third one? I've contacted someone, the last 2 weeks. Should I contact them again? Right. So again, hopefully I've given you some insights into some different strategies and realization, the importance of follow-up. But a great question is also in that pre-screening is, when would you like me to follow up? Because if they are in that consideration stage or even the awareness stage, they probably do not need you to contact them every week. Right. And another thing to ask them is, what is their preferred ways of communicating? So if you are determined to send emails, but if it's not a way that they prefer to be communicated with, then again, your success criteria is probably slightly diminished. So thank you for that, Ron. I appreciate your feedback. Any other comments or questions?
I think follow-up has changed a little over the last few years as well. So
Yeah,
it's good to
absolutely.
keep in mind.
For sure. And it's good to change. I have a client who had been in industry for 40 years. He was a president of a large company. And he was starting to be challenged with having conversations with, the new decision makers that he was having. He was finding that there was, in this particular, he was in the forestry section and dealt with a lot of engineers. And all of the people that he dealt with from a customer perspective now retired. And he was used to, I just pick up the telephone and I call you and we have a conversation over the phone. And the people that were newly in that position didn't pick up the phone. And they would say, just send me a text. And this was something that was like, but that's, we can solve things differently, right? So there was another mindset of this is what we need to do. And so there's another example of adaptability. So thank you for that. I have prepared a little, quick chat sheet there. If you would like me to send it to you, just email me. There's my email, Shawna@quigleycoaching.com. And I'll just send you the summary worksheet if that's of value to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Shawna, for this amazing reminder and just the conversation in general. I think everyone managed to pull some good ideas from this and good reminders of what they should do.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk with you guys. And that email there, please feel free to reach out to me even beyond the summary worksheet and connect with me on social media. I would love to keep the conversation going. And I wish you guys the most amazing rest of your day and week.
Yeah, so if anyone's looking for it, once we post this as a video, we'll keep Shawna's LinkedIn in the description, so you can always reach out to her through that.
Yeah, thank you, Shawna.
Thank you.
And Shawna is great. Appreciate it.
You're very welcome.